Pieces of Hate, Episode 5, Functional Relationships with Paul Elam and Tom Golden. Let's see what they're up to.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. I am Paul Elam with a voice for men, and I am joined, as always, by Mr. Tom Golden, LCSW of menaregood.com. Hi, Tom. How you doing?
Hey, Paul. I'm doing good. How about yourself?
Oh, man, I can't complain. Well, but we're going to field some complaints probably after this talk.
I think so.
Probably so.
I think so.
There's a trigger warning for the more sensitive among the red pill crowd. We're going to have a conversation that I'm going to guess in about 10% of the crowd won't be very popular, but we're going to have it anyway because that's how we roll. Tom, why don't you tell us what we're doing here?
Well, I think we're going to talk about healthy relationships.
Oh my God, no!
And Paul, you have done some great videos on this, and maybe you can kind of summarize what you said in those videos to sort of set us up for what we're going to talk about tonight.
Okay, yeah.
This is going to be healthy relationships from a red pill perspective.
Yes, and of course, now there is going to be some in the crowd that see that concept as contradictory.
Yes.
However, I feel like I'm qualified red pill. I feel like the guy I'm talking to right now is qualified red pill, and we both happen to be in long-term relationships. So I don't think that this excludes us, but the main purpose of even approaching this was just simply the knowledge, Tom, that as dangerous as relationships are, and it's certainly as dangerous as marriages these days, and all the issues that we deal with men, the fact remains that most men are going to pair bond. Most heterosexual men are going to pair bond with a woman.
Yes.
It's going to happen, and that includes every last member of our audience. Most of them are going to pair bond with women at one time or another. And if you're going to do that, I think we should have a good, healthy discussion about how to comport yourself, how to go into it, what problems to watch for, and what positives to work for. And I know that there may be some difficulty in the audience with even the concept of something positive come out of a relationship, because we have so many people in our audiences that have been burned so badly in relationships.
Yes.
And all I can say is, look, guys, I understand. I don't blame anybody for feeling that way. But the fact is, men are going to be in relationships. Red pill men are going to be in relationships with women. And we need to be able to have these discussions about what's right, what's wrong for them in those circumstances.
Yes. And we both get emails from guys asking about this stuff. I mean, guys are interested in, how the hell do I have a relationship if I'm going to have one? Because I'm pulled in that direction. What do I do? And so this talk is kind of for those guys,
Yeah. And honestly, most of my clients that I see online are there because they're in relationships and they don't necessarily want to get out of them. But anyway, typical standard disclaimer, neither Tom nor I are saying anybody should be in a relationship. We're not saying that this is what you have to do or anything of the sort. We're just trying to have a conversation about the guys that do decide to engage in relationships and some of the things they can do to make their lives better. And what I've done in the first two parts of the 3-part series that I'm working on now, part 3 should be out tomorrow, by the way.
And a really good series it is, by the way. I would urge people to check those out because they're excellent.
We'll put links to them in the low bar. Thanks for those kind words, Tom.
Yeah, well, it's the truth.
What's important to me, and we're going to hear more of this in part 3, because I find myself every time, Tom, I go about writing about men in relationships, it's like involuntary. My mind and my thoughts and my energy all get driven toward men's relationships with themselves. That's really what it's all about. And I know how cliche and 12-step that sounds to say, oh, you got to have a relationship with you first. Guess what? You have to have a relationship with you first. You have to have a very solid relationship with who you are, with what you know and believe about yourself, with what your values are, what you'll put up with in a relationship, what you won't put up with in a relationship. And you have to be able to know if when you say this, I won't put up with XYZ in a relationship, is that really what you won't put up with? Or are you just saying that? And because a lot of men go in, how many times have you heard men in your life, even really, really super blue pill men say, I wouldn't put up with that shit. And they go home and it's yes, dear, no, dear.
It's true.
So you've got to get that stuff sorted out. So what I focused on was one, family of origin issues, that we carry our families of origin into every relationship we have in our lives. And it doesn't even have to be a marriage or a girlfriend, boyfriend situation. Friendships, every relationship we ever will have in our lives, we carry elements of our family of origin in there. And if your family of origin stuff is still murky and unresolved, and if there's been abuse, and there is in a lot of cases, and it hasn't been dealt with, there's no closure on a lot of things. If relationships between a child and parents were very dysfunctional, and there's no closure on that, there's no sorting it out, then those very things get carried into every relationship you have. So that's why I said first, in working on yourself, clear up your business with your family of origin. And we all have business with our families.
Yes.
I mean, you're a therapist. Would you agree, Tom?
Absolutely. And, the bad news is that what you're saying is true. The good news is that we can clear it up. I mean, there are things out there that you can do that's going to clear that crap out, including EMDR and all kinds of other things that you can release that stuff. Because if you were afraid of mom when you're a little guy or even a teenager, you're probably going to have that same fear of saying no and saying anything to your present relationship. So, get it.
Yeah, if you were brought up in an environment where you better say yes to mama, and let's face it, most of us were. Even in the more healthy families, man, the whole cultural thing of telling your mother no. Oh, no, not in my generation. You got an ass kicking for that. I mean, that wasn't going to be tolerated. And folks, that's abuse. That is abuse.
Yes.
If you can't have your own individuality, if you have to mold yourself into a role to please the parent, that is psychological abuse, and it runs into physical abuse. And that is the kind of stuff that carries in. And then you find yourself with a woman, you can't say no to her, and you wonder why.
Yes, exactly. It's a template, it just sits right on top of everything.
So that, guys, first, family of origin, deal with it. It's worth it. And the rewards for sorting through your family of origin issues are fantastic. It isn't just how it impacts you positively in relationships, but once you sort through that stuff, you'll never see yourself or the rest of the world the same way again. It's sort of like a red pill of its own.
Yes. And you'll start enjoying your life in a different kind of way because you'll be more in the present tense. That old stuff pulls us back into the past. And so everything we do is sort of tinged and colored by that old past crap. When we finish that stuff, or at least process it, we're able to enjoy the present. Here I am feeling good. We want
and genuinely feeling good. Because
at
a dysfunction, we find ways to feel good with alcohol or chemicals or sex or some other thing. But just us in our own skin, when you come from a dysfunctional family, you're not comfortable in your own skin.
Yeah.
You find some way to alter that. Anyway, I don't want to spend too long about that, except to say that, Tom, sometime I would like us to do one of these talks just on working through family of origin issues.
It'd be interesting.
If you're open to that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So critical for men. Yeah, it is. No one has really ever lent a hand to men to understand how to do that crap.
No, they don't. They market that stuff to women. They don't sell it to men at all. And unfortunately, like in the red pill community, which as great as the information is, talking about family of origin isn't something that happens a whole lot. We talk about men's current relationships and their current place in the world and dealing with women, but we don't talk a lot about the path that got them there, except in a big cultural context. Yes. And that's not enough. So I do want to come back and visit that. There were two more parts to what I really tried to stress in the first two parts of this series. One is to ditch the idea of romantic love. And that, I think, that's a really tough one, and it deserves some explanation, but let me just go into that for a moment. When I'm talking about romantic love, I'm talking about love that is sort of, or an idea of love that is born out of infatuation and that sort of chemical charge. And let's face it, infatuation, your brain turns into a chemistry set and
Yep.
starts pumping out all kinds of stuff. And it's a state of unreality. It's almost like a state of psychosis. You look at a person and you think, oh my God, this person completes me. This is the missing piece from my life. And she's perfect. She could never do anything wrong. And she would never hurt me. She would never, ever lie to me. She would never cheat on me. She would never take my money. She would never abuse me or exploit me. And then we take that state of stupidity and we try to create it for the next 30 years with the same person.
Yeah. And it may be stupidity, but it feels damn good.
Oh, sure.
At the time, man. It feels good.
And I tell my clients all the time, man, drive that bitch like you stole it. It feels good. That's great, man. There's nothing wrong with enjoying infatuation.
Yes.
When you put the expectation that that's going to last,
forget it.
Or that she's never going to develop a razor sharp tongue and start cutting you down, or she's never going to start treating you like you're not quite doing enough, which I know no man identifies with that from women at all.
Yes, or cut off the sexuality.
Love, to me, is something that happens over a long period of time and after resolving a lot of conflicts.
Exactly.
It doesn't, it's not that you fall in love with somebody and then you successfully nurture that and develop it and make it permanent for the rest of your life. It just doesn't work that way. So when I say forget romantic love, I'm just saying, remember the whole time you meet somebody that they're a human being, that they're going to disappoint you, that you're by the way, flawed too. And this is going to come out. And that if you don't put stock in them romantically, but rather you put in stock in them as a human being, then you're going to be subject to a lot less disappointments. And you're not living in a fairy tale land. Living in a fantasy land about who a person is or what a relationship is kills people. It's a really, really bad mistake to make. And finally, the point that I wanted to make in the first two parts of the series, other than your family of origin and ditch romantic love, is you've got to get rid, absolutely once and for all, of the sugar and spice narrative about who women are. And give me just a few seconds with that, because that's a little complicated too. Look, poetry, fairy tales, they're an extension. They're what they are is they're telling you what our culture believes a lot of times, or the moral lessons and everything. And so you have snips and snails and puppy dog tails. That's boys. That's what little boys are made of. And what are little girls made of? They're made of sugar and spice and everything nice. And the thing is, and we don't want to talk about this much, but culturally, we believe that shit. And it's almost like we're infatuated as a culture with women, and that we're maintaining that infatuation, and it's expressed through that poem. But that's how, sometimes they have a serial killer, a woman that killed 8 or 9 people before they caught her. Why? Because they never suspected her.
Right.
Because they didn't think a woman could do that, because
Right.
girls are sugar and spice and everything nice. And it's why you can get away with some stupid cliche like believe the woman. No matter what she says, I was raped by Beelzebub. It must have happened because a woman said it. Culturally, that sugar and spice narrative, that is very, very descriptive of our general regard for women, what we believe about them. We treat them as sacrosanct and inviolable in every way, and even to the point that we can't hold them to being accountable. Because how can you hold somebody accountable when they're sugar and spice and everything else? You just can't do it. So those 3 points, Tom, and all of it is internal work. That's the point. There's nothing in anything I said in these first 2 parts about what kind of person she is. The problem here for men in relationships is the kind of man they are, the kind of person they are. Where are their boundaries? Where are their values? Do they sacrifice their values? And one point I made in this is that I believe that every man in every relationship out there comes to a crossroad once the control efforts on the part of the woman start, where he has to make a choice between his values, his self-respect, and obedience, which is a sellout. And my point is that I believe fully that most men in that moment sell out. And I mean the vast majority, in order not to lose love, in order not to lose the woman who their infatuated mind is telling them is the most perfect woman in the world that they need. And of course, if she was so damn perfect, why is she challenging you to sacrifice your values to make her happy? She's not perfect, or you wouldn't be in that position. But anyway, that's just a general summary of how I started this, and I'm going to go into a little bit more finite detail in part 3.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Now, where do we go?
Well, I think part of it for me, Tom, is that this is a discussion in the red pill community that needs to happen. I mean, we do have, and I've noticed, I made a joke in the first part, and I commented on my own video right after I posted it. And I said, in before MGTOW, that is all. Because I knew somebody would come in and just say, MGTOW, that is all. Or if you just shun women, you don't have to worry about any of this shit.
Yeah, and maybe for some people, that's a good thing.
And agreed. I mean, absolutely right.
But I think there's also another group where they're not going to feel like that, and so that's what we're talking about tonight is what can those guys do? And Paul, I think one of the first things guys can do is to learn how to fight, because you've got to fight. If you're going to have a good relationship, you've got to be able to fight. When a couple comes to me, and I've been working with couples for many years, but when a couple comes to me and they say, we hardly have any fights, I go, oh, fuck no.
Exactly.
Anything but that, because they have no history of being able to say what they want and then fight about it and then compromise and come to some sort of conclusion together about what's going to happen.
And then they wonder why they showed up in counseling.
Well, yeah. Well, because they're starting to bubble up to that point where things are blowing up,
Yeah.
But it's this very skill of learning how to fight that's so critical, because, they have that whole relationship cycle thing, which is fascinating. It's like an hour clock, where at the top of the clock, it's like you're in a honeymoon. You've got this infatuation, this romantic love stuff. And then something happens and it goes sour and somebody screws up.
Yeah, that something is called reality.
Yes, that's exactly right. Something screws up, and then something happens and one person pisses off the other person, and you have to have one person say, oops, my bad. And the other person says, okay, let's go ahead with that instead. And then you come back to the honeymoon again. This is a cycle where people go through this cycle. A good relationship goes through this cycle every day. There's something that needs to be taken care of between the two people. And it's that thousands of times of going through this where people start to learn, hey, this person's got my back. This person will work with me on things. We can compromise. We can learn how to live together and both succeed. And that's what we're looking for.
If you're not learning that, if what you're learning is this person will not compromise, will not work with me, must have their way, then get the fuck out of that relationship.
Quickly.
You're wasting your time.
Exactly.
Unless you want a life of always surrendering to someone else's whims.
Yeah. And that sucks. I mean, we don't want to do that because that's completely imbalanced. And of course, we're living in a world where it is imbalanced already, with women should get their way more often than men. And And what really pisses me off is that our whole culture now has taken that imbalance and made it even worse by saying, oh, women have been oppressed. And it's the men who did the oppressing. So what before in the 1950s, it was this delicate balance in relationships. Now has become a lopsided scale, where the guy has to try 10 times harder, to be able to keep things equalized. Because you're a man. You blah, 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 blah. You know how that goes. So, the guys out there have to work harder at this because we are at a disadvantage. We're at a disadvantage because in the natural course is that women are expected to get more and you're supposed to do the getting for her. And now it's gotten even worse by saying that they're oppressed, which is crazy. This is crazy.
It's insane.
It brings women into relationship feeling resentful of their partner before they get started.
And entitled.
Yes, it's crazy.
And if you're starting a relationship where one person feels like you're an oppressor and that and the other person is entitled to your deference because you're a historical oppressor, that's not a relationship worth starting. It's not. It's bullshit. The other point that I want to make about that, Tom, about the fighting.
Yeah.
And this one is really near and dear to my heart. I agree, couples need to learn how to fight.
Yes.
What I really want to say is men need to learn how to fight.
Yes,
Men
exactly.
do not know how to fight with women.
Exactly.
When it comes to it, guys, look, if you listen to my work, I've said a million times, I've just sang the laurels of men's accomplishments throughout history and art, literature, architecture, science, anything you can think of. Civilization itself is a product of masculinity. But the fact of the matter is that modern men in 2018, the average man is absolutely without tools and without skills when it comes to arguing with women.
Yes.
They get wasted by women in arguments. Women will have them on their knees apologizing, saying they were wrong about everything, because guys have nothing in their personality that even allows them. You're not allowed to fight with women as a man.
Right.
That's a bad thing. So we've got that training in us.
Yes.
And so we don't get any practice. And by the time you're 25, 30 years old, a woman can talk circles around you completely and have you scratching your head wondering what the hell happened.
Never hit a girl.
Never hit a girl. and don't even make one feel like you might hit her.
That's right.
And don't defend yourself.
Yes.
Because that's the message, because real men don't defend themselves. And
Yes.
I'm telling you guys, if you want to have any shot, I believe this anyway, I can't say it empirically, but it is my opinion. If you want to have a shot at any kind of functional relationship with a woman, you better know how to fight.
Yes. Yes.
And that means knowing how to draw lines in the sand, knowing how to cut through bullshit, knowing how to say, no, that's not what I said, and I'm not going to let you mischaracterize what I said.
Right.
And you're going to have to be able to shut her down with a smile on your face.
Exactly. It's the smile that's important. Don't take the bait. The bait, I've seen it over and over again. The women know just what to do to get the guy completely pissed off. And he blows up. He's, you fucking bitch. Oh God, you're just again. See what happens?
Anger issue.
We try and talk, and you turn into a monster. It's like, don't take the bait, guys. You gotta learn to not take the bait, because she, you can pretty much guarantee it. She's probably going to try and hook you in to a position where you're going to blow. Don't blow. And the guys who learn not to blow realize, when I don't blow, guess what happens? She blows. Because if you can learn not to blow, you can keep your cool and smile through things and not get too upset. She's going to act out what was there before, not you. Because she's getting you to act it out, with this hooking you stuff. So, yeah,
that's something you should always remember, guys, exactly what Tom just said. If you're blowing up and saying you fucking cunt or you stupid bitch and screaming at her, guess what? You're acting out for her.
Yes. Yes.
You're doing her bidding. She planned this. So guess what? Now she gets to say, it's all about your anger.
Yep.
Use her. Just like the oppressor I knew you were when we got together.
He needs anger management.
You need anger management. I have no issues. I couldn't have done anything wrong because you're an abuser.
You're the one who gets upset.
That's how a lot of women win those fights. And
Absolutely.
when you take that from them, Tom's right about that too. See what happens when you go, okay, whatever.
Exactly.
She'll blow up.
Extreme power. When you say, oh, really? Is that so? It's like, guys, learn how to say, ah, so. Is that so? How about that? Now, remember, saying ah, so or how about that is not agreeing with her. It's not saying, oh, yes, honey, I agree. It's just saying, oh, is that right? How about that? It's great. It's a great tool. You know, some old Zen stories about, you know, how to do that, how to not say anything, but just say, oh, so.
And, you know, one that I've used many times, oh, man, isn't it funny how two people can see things so differently?
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
And here's the point I want them to get about this, Tom. When you see her, when you react that way, and the next thing you know, her game has quit working, right? So now she's really angry because doesn't have the control over you that she wants. So she starts acting out. And that feeling you get when you're sitting there feeling like a puppeteer, all calm and collected, and she's bouncing off the walls, that good feeling you have at that moment, that's what she's been feeling every time she's got to act out for her. She feels like a puppeteer.
Yes. But we want to use that element when she loses it and we don't. We want to use that as a means to start to compromise and a means to start solving the problem rather than pointing the finger at her and saying, oh, what a bitch you are. That doesn't help anything. You know, what helps is to use that as a petri dish to be able to start to compromise and work things out. You know?
Let me throw a question at you, Tom, about this, because, I mean, there's a perfect segue right into the next critical part, and that is compromise, because all relationships are compromise. My friendship with Tom is a compromise. Sometimes we compromise on things. All relationships are that way, and it's not to be an exception. But here's the deal. I tell men all the time that when it comes to your values, no compromise. Now, you can compromise on what movie you're going to see. You can compromise on where you're going to eat dinner or when the mother-in-law or whoever is going to come visit. Those are things you can compromise on.
Right.
But values, are you allowed friendships? Because the habit of women is to isolate men. And it's interesting when you study up on the characteristics of abusers, one of the things you see over and over again is that they isolate their victims.
Correct.
It's the standard in long-term relationships between men and women that the women begin to isolate the men from their friends, from their social support. It's a control thing. So that's where a lot of men, I think they give those things up. And then after a long term, years go by, they look around, they have no friends. They have no hobbies, no interests, nothing that they do. They work and they sleep. Except for her. And so here's the question, Tom. A lot of times in relationships, and I mean regularly, a lot of men experience with women says that the woman will challenge their values. That the woman will say, no, I don't like that guy. He drinks. So I don't want you hanging out with him. I'm not comfortable with him in the home. Something, whatever, to isolate the guy. Or, you know, I don't know why you have to go fishing all the time. And we, you know, there's that country song and it's a joke. You know, my wife told me I had to choose between her and fishing and I'll miss her. But it's making a joke. That country song is a reflection of something in our culture where men have this experience in relationships that women rob them, or they expect men to surrender anything that's not about her. And so when it comes to compromise, Tom, you know, where do you think it's best for men to draw the line? I mean, we've got to compromise on a lot of things, but how can we, I mean, we can't suggest men, that's the problem, isn't it? Compromising your values? Every
man's got to decide for himself what he can compromise and what he can't. He's got to be the judge about what that is. And I've seen over and over again that one of the best ways to help men understand what to compromise is to consult with other men. Because your wife is going to tell you one thing, but your friends are going to tell you something else. And getting feedback from them about, this kind of issue, what can I compromise on? What's my key value? What do I want to maintain? What's worth it for me to maintain? What's okay to let go? I mean, that kind of decision, I think, is important. Men need to work on it. And I've seen over and over again that when men get together with other men and talk about that stuff, it really, really helps. And that's what I see our work being a lot, Paul, is helping men get together with other men, because we've been isolated for a long time. And every time, men talk about their feelings, etc., they get shamed from the culture. They get thrown out.
Or they talk about what they want.
Yes. Yeah. Even talking about
you want to go fishing. Your fishing is more important than your daughter.
Well, yeah, sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes. Or I'll take her with me. I'll teach her how to fish. You don't like fishing? That's fine. She and I'll go. I'll teach you how to bass fish,
Or say just on Saturdays.
Yeah, and every guy has got to think about what is worth it to compromise and what's worth it to hold on to. And, that's an important question.
And to me, it leads into another reality here that we talk about on the other side of this equation, this individual that you're dealing with. Because the most demanding individuals, the women who must be the center of attention, who must have the whole world revolve around them, who feel threatened by any of your friendships, any of your acquaintances, any of your activities. Look, a functional relationship means two relatively whole people coming together.
Yes.
The woman that has that level of expectation of you is not a whole person. This is a stunted, immature person who feels entitled and who has unrealistic expectations. Because if you really want somebody to give up everything that defines their lives in order to put the focus on you, that's not partnership. That's dysfunction. It's sickness.
Right. And it's okay to call her out on that.
Back to the point of, can you argue? Can you call a woman out and say, look, this is not reasonable.
This is not what I want.
Yep, it's not what I want. And
You
so I'm not
what you want.
So I'm not going to give it to you.
A lot of times men are confused about what they really want. I find my job with men in couples is to really coach them on the hell do you really want? What do you want? Because once he says, I want this, this, and this, he can go to her and say, okay, I want this, this, and this. But until he really gets it set in his mind about what he really wants, it doesn't work because he can't say anything. It's like he's powerless.
So what do you think is the magic bullet, Tom, for men to get from where most men are, where most blue pill men are, which is, I just want to make her happy and I want some peace. And so if I got to give this up or give that up or sacrifice a friendship, whatever, I'll do it because I don't want the conflict. I want peace in my home, which, I think it's a very unusual concept of what peace is about. But that is the blue pill approach for a lot of men. So what's the magic bullet that gets them from being that obsequious kind of individual to somebody that says, you know what? No, I'm going.
Yes.
And that's the end of that story. We can talk about it when I get back because it's not negotiable.
Yeah. We see over and over again that men's red pill moment oftentimes is when they get screwed. When they get screwed over, when they're falsely accused, when they're thrown out for this or that, when they lose their job and their wife says, oh, well, no money, no guy, there's all kinds of things that turn men into a position where they're starting to think in a red pill kind of way. But sadly, most of the time it is due to crisis of some sort. It's been my observation. And
that's, to me, the big shame of it all, because you're absolutely right. Most men get introduced to their first red pill because they got screwed by the blue pill. Badly. And so the red pill needed to be there. Yes. But what I'm saying is that if you're in that arrangement where you're having to claw and scratch just to have any ounce of self-respect or identity, you're already screwed. You don't have to wait for her to get a lawyer. when you're in that situation. You don't have to wait for an accusation to come your way.
Yeah.
When you're in this totally imbalanced relationship, Tom talked about people coming together, some sense of equity between the two of them. But when you're like this the whole time, you're already fucked.
Yes.
And it's just a matter of time till the other shoe drops.
Yes.
And then you find the red pill. So I'm just trying to, how do we get into maybe find that red pill just by recognizing that the situation they're in is shitty to begin with?
Keep doing videos, Paul.
I'm trying, brother. I'm trying.
Doing videos. I think that men need to know too that there are women out there that are good in relationships, that they do exist, although they are much more scarce, I think, than, I don't want to even put a number on it, but they're scarce. And you've got to be clever in looking. You have to be clever in looking, because then the first thing I would say for men is to look for women who came from an intact family, with both mom and dad there, and she has a good relationship with dad. If she has a good relationship with her father, you're probably going to be on a pretty good place. You never know, though. I mean, that's not a sure thing.
Well, I was going to say, just don't stop there. I mean, certainly
Yes.
Look at her family of origin big time. He's absolutely dead on about that, but there's a lot longer list that follows
Yes.
that.
Thank you. You're
Certainly,
right.
like if she came from an intact family, but she works in a titty bar, unless you're thinking one night or something like that, that's
There you
probably
go.
not going to work for you. Part of my question about this, though, Tom, is that I have a somewhat different perspective.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree. There are women out there with potential. I don't think, or of course, there's always going to be a handful of unicorns out there. I think one of them is in Zimbabwe, the other is in Eastern. But aside from the unicorns, you have women that are hopeless, and you have women that might be taught how to treat a man with dignity, how to set aside misandry, and how to eat some of our own gynocentrism. But they don't just know that for the most part. So what I say, my opinion is that men should approach this as though the only thing they're going to find, or that they're likely to find with enough screening and enough work, is a woman who has the potential to not be an absolute fucking ass in a relationship. And I know that's cold sounding, but
Yeah. Barney's trying to get in the door.
you got to let Barney in, man.
I closed the door because they were making noise out there, but
Oh,
he's
man.
banging on
Well,
the door now, wants to get in.
remember, Barney's a pit bull, man. Don't say no.
Let me in. Woo.
I've seen Barney. He can
I
do
think
pretty much.
I'm probably a little more optimistic than you are. I think that I think there's more unicorns out there that they're
Okay.
there. If you can learn to say no, if you can learn to work with someone, and man, if you have a relationship and you start to work with them and you say no about something and she can't handle it, get the hell out. Find a woman who can deal with you, and it's a boon. I mean, the benefits of having a long-term relationship are huge. It's just huge. Having a partner, a good partner who you can work with. I worked with widowed people for years. They all said the same thing. What's the worst thing about this? They say the worst thing about this is that I lost the person who knew my story. And that's the real glue of a long-term relationship, is that you are in it together. You've got this shared history together, and you've got this thousands and thousands of times where you have compromised with each other and you have worked things out. And it's a good thing. It's a really good thing. It's very, very helpful for us.
And I probably shouldn't have derailed us. I mean, what your point was, and you're right, there are positives in relationships. And I know that's absolutely forbidden to say.
Yeah, well, you have one. You have a good relationship.
I have a good relationship.
Yeah.
That does not mean that I have a romantic heartthrob. It doesn't mean a lot of things, but what it does mean is that I call it a sturdy, functional relationship. There's
There you
trust
go.
there. There's friendship there.
Yes.
There's a sense of camaraderie.
Yes,
There's
exactly.
a sense that if I'm sick, I won't be alone.
Exactly.
That sort of thing. And those things are real positives. And
And you'll bust your ass if she's sick too, you know?
absolutely. Absolutely.
It goes both ways. That's
whatever
what you want,
it takes.
guys. You want it to go both ways, not a one-way valve. If it's a one-way valve, run like hell.
And you know that early.
Yes.
And I want to say this, I'm going to say this again, guys. You know that early. Women can't hide who they are. Neither can we. Nobody can hide who they are if somebody is watching them and analyzing and trying to figure them out as a person instead of getting infatuated and how do I, make every breath she takes something wonderful and magical that the world has never seen before. But in figuring out who they are, how do they handle the word no? How do they handle the expectation that your relationship is equal?
Yes.
How do they handle the fact that you matter?
Yes.
And if they don't, guys, you know it. You can know it in the first 2 weeks. You don't even have to wait till after the honeymoon. Test a woman. I tell guys all the time, tell them no. Find something to say no to.
And women like it when you say no.
For the most part, they do. The ones that don't, I'd say probably half of women, or maybe 40%, I'm guessing, that the moment they get it firmly in their head that they're not going to get their way about everything, probably about half of women are gone right at that point.
Huh.
And then it may take a few more times of hearing no for half of what remains to be gone. But hearing no consistently and proving that you can look in the mirror and say, you know what, he's right. This is about him too.
Yes.
We got it. Everything has to be a teamwork sort of deal, and there's going to be lots of compromise. If she can't do that, and you don't know it within the first 90 days, it's because you're not fucking looking, and you're not trying to know.
Yes, and the other side of that is that he has to be able to deal with her saying no. It goes both ways, and when you can get it going both ways, that's when things happen that are good.
And I don't think, honestly, again, I may be wrong, but I'm just going off of this anecdotally. I don't think most men have that much of a problem. I mean, we already have this sort of social setup where women are elevated and lauded for being independent and lauded for being able to say no. So hearing no from a woman from a lot of guys isn't something radical or new. And if you can't hear no from a woman that you want to be involved with, then you need to go back and work on yourself until you're ready to be in a relationship.
Exactly.
But I don't think most guys need to be told that. I think most guys would kill for a relationship where they could trust somebody and where it felt like both people mattered.
Yes. Yes. Indeed. Maybe that's a good place to stop.
Yeah, we'll stop there with the hope ever burning that some woman out there will hear this and go, "Oh, he matters too." Well, of course.
And I think there's more that we haven't touched on, Paul. Maybe we should bring this back up again. Who knows?
We can do that, and like I said, I'd like to do more on family of origin issues.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
That's a great big one.
Yep.
Anyway, that was fun.
That was fun. I enjoyed it. I hope people can get something from it.
Well, anything else before we sign off and say good night?
Anything else? Yeah, come see me on Patreon. I could really use your support. We've got a forum now, a private forum for just the Patreon people on my Patreon site. It's really interesting. There's people from all over the world that are joining up and talking about things. It's kind of cool.
That is awesome.
Yes.
And I also saw that you're having a group meeting through your Patreon. I did not go, but I just sort of, it's
the same time yours is. So it's kind of.
Yeah. So we're in competition. My group is better than Tom's group.
I have to agree. But my forum's better than yours.
All right. Well, yeah, since I don't have, I do have one, but anyway, Yes, please support Tom on Patreon. Also, if you're not supporting me, I appreciate that support. It takes time and effort to keep this content coming and to bring red pills to men who need them.
Yes.
And with that, I guess we'll sign off for this time.
Good, man. Men are good, as are you.
Yes, you are.
All right. We'll
Bye-bye.
see you guys. Bye-bye.